podcast. We've got an exciting guest for you guys today. Charlie Tetrick is a prominent figure in the Kansas City advertising and business community, currently serving as CEO of WTA, formerly Walz Tetrick Advertising. His leadership in the agency spans back to 1993. Tetrick Marketing Design merged with Travis Walz to form Walz Tetrick Advertising. At age 27, Charlie took full ownership of the agency in 94, following the death of his mentor, Travis Walz. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit. Rebranding for Growth in February of 2006, he led the agency's rebrand to WTA, introducing the credo "Made to Move." Under his leadership, the agency has grown significantly, tripling its gross revenue year over year in 2023 and managing high-profile accounts like the Kansas City Royals, Sporting Kansas City, and Hard Rock International. He recently oversaw the launch of Fuel Labs, an AI-dedicated operation, and a World Cup-focused podcast called Heart and Goal. Charlie's highly active in local and state level leadership, holding several prestigious positions: U.S. Air Force Civilian Honorary Squad Commander for the 303rd Fighter Wing, gubernatorial appointee for the Kansas Work State Board and Governor's Economic Council, Chairman Emeritus for the American Royal, and the Council President Emeritus for the Boy Scouts of America, Heart of America Council. He's been named as CEO of the Year for one of the top 50 Kansans you should know, and in 2023, recognized as a champion of business and a multi-year recipient of the Top 10 Small Business Award. Charlie, thanks for coming on, brother.
Yeah. Hey, you still with me? Looks like we had a little glitch in the... There you go. You back? Okay.
Yeah, looks like we're good.
We're good, yeah.
We'll make sure that no spirits in the wires, but yeah, man. So, I know we were talking a little bit off show. I've only been to Kansas City one time. Beautiful city. Sounds like you've made quite a career for yourself and quite a name for yourself in the space there. And, definitely moving on to, what would you say, national, global ambitions outside of being a regional shop?
Oh, kind of. Yeah, it's been a real growth story. Ours is a lot more entrepreneurial than probably, raw, ad guy kind of stuff. I started this shop 6 months out of college, and that was 35 years ago, which is crazy. And so it's been a journey, lots of up and downs over the years, but had some pretty heavy duty growth over the last certainly decade or so.
I love it. Well, let's maybe take me back to the beginning a little bit. So did you grow up in Kansas City? Where'd you study, and what got you into the business?
Yeah, I grew up in Oklahoma, of all places, in Tulsa, and then went to KU, which, is so funny. All these years later, they're now a big client of ours. We handle all the NIL work for the university.
Oh, amazing.
Rolling all that stuff. So I can get into some sports chatter if you care. But
let's do it.
Went to KU, and then I was about 6 months out of college, and I'd gone through the the advertising sequence there at KU, and then did some intern work at Barkley at the time. It was Barkley and Evergreen way back then, and did some work with Moroccan Associates out of Oklahoma, those kind of college years. But so just kind of hung out a shingle when I got out of college, and it's hard to fast forward all these years later, but I've done, I think 5 or 6 acquisitions over the years. That's kind of helped to get us where we are. And probably the early one was a merger with Travis Walz, and John Walz and I put the two together, and I was probably 3 years in. So this was probably 1993, and we kind of had old guy, young guy thing going. John was 59, and I was kind of 3 years out of school, and changed the name. It's pronounced Tetrick, so changed the name to Walz Tetrick at the time. And John was the majority stockholder, and I was kind of the young guy working on new business and everything else. And we're about 10 months into this, and John has a heart attack. And man, I'm like, what do we got going on here? And so that was quite an event to go through. I bought the business from his estate and went through a lot of that stuff. And so that's actually there's a book that the Entrepreneurial Kaufman Center wrote a book on, Lessons from the Edge, and we're a chapter in it about who knew anything about key man insurance back when you're 26 years old. It's all that stuff. So anyhow, that's it's been fun. We just kind of went on kind of a run after that, and kind of kept our heads down and been kind of growing ever since. So it's been pretty exciting.
I love it. Tell me, what gave you the audacity to think you could start an agency right out of college? I mean, with very, very limited experience, but was there something about you personally, or something about that time in the world Like most people go out and establish themselves in the industry and then they start an agency. But was there something that was just kind of itching at you where you're like, man, I think I could do this? Let's just
Oh,
go
a little
for it.
bit. I did the honest answer. I didn't know any better. So why not? Let's jump in. There was a little hotel management company in Kansas City that I'd known the owners. And so I was a little bit their kind of offsite marketing guy. And I did that for about 6 months. They had 8 or 10 different hotel brands. And so we were doing bar calendars and feeder city ads and just kind of some of the little local stuff. And so that was really my springboard. And I kind of started with these 6 or 8 hotels and kind of off we went. And I joked that the entrepreneurial story, my dad loaned me $500 and paid my first month's rent. And
Let's go.
last year we're knocking on 200 million in revenue. So it's been a ride for sure.
That's fun. All right. So tell me about the rebrand. I mean, I think a lot of agencies are kind of moving away from the old heritage brand. They don't want to sound like law firms anymore. I don't know. I think it's a lost art. I'm a big Mad Men guy and I love looking back at the history of the business, but I also understand the want to be nimble, dynamic, modern. So tell me a little bit about the rebrand.
Yeah. So it's been Walz Tetrick for just all these years. And we kind of shifted into WTA, I don't know, probably 2 years ago. Largely because it's just easier on everybody. Everyone always got it wrong. It's it's WALZ, so it's not Waltz. So it's always Walz Tetrick. It's like we got to put an end to this that we can get this right. So that's how we jumped into WTA, and we've kind of adapted over the last year or so. Our kind of company mantra is just kind of made to move, and that's really about. We just don't make stuff here. It's all about kind of moving things forward, moving products forward, and clients forward, and how do we actually make a real difference and kind of benchmark and change for success? And it's one of the biggest things I've noticed in my career, that the accountability factor in advertising over the last, certainly now, but you can go back as early as, 5, 6, 7 years ago, you'd be running your campaigns, TV, radio, outdoor, whatever you're doing before this huge onset of digital. And, you would adapt and fix things, get ready for the next month coming up. Now it's pure accountability for what happened yesterday and how was yesterday's engagement and clicks, and we're going to fix that tonight and have you ready by 9 the next morning. And all this accountability and new things are changing. So we're just kind of riding that wave as we're building systems that accommodate all of that.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing that everything is measurable now, but it also kind of puts I was talking to a performance marketer the other day, and he said, some of the white space is in the immeasurable, right? Like if you can't measure terrestrial radio, but people still listen to it.
Right.
You can't measure a board, that's strategically placed with the right message, but people still drive by it. So there's almost a premium price put on measurability. So if you can find advertising channels and mediums that are immeasurable, sometimes they're available for a discount. Like I heard a staggering figure that only 5% of advertising is spent on outdoor boards. I mean, they're everywhere. They're the one thing you can't avoid in the world these days.
Yeah, and it kind of depends on the category too. And I think our media team, we're probably in the Midwest. I mean, short of Chicago, we're probably one of the biggest media buyers in the Midwest. Just been our thing, media. And our media team would tell you television viewership, it's never been higher. It's just a lot more fragmented, a lot more options, and you've got to attack in a different way. But the traditional sources are all very, very strong, and it has to be just part of the mix. Because people are judging your digital, but there's a lot of truth in billboards get a lot of eyeballs. So
100%.
Got to put it all together.
Yeah, or even like you said, TV is, I suppose, finally reached the cord cutting. 49% of people have cable now, and 51 plus are now moved to streaming or some type of online version of their cable bundles. But there's still opportunities to reach 59% of the country. So,
and it's also the multi-screen stuff. I mean, no one's got the TV on without having their phone out or their laptop open or something. I mean, all of that's got to work together now. So it's a real science for sure.
I love it. All right, let's talk about sports. You brought it up at the top of the interview. You guys are AOR for Kansas City Royals, supporting Kansas City, and you've got a World Cup focused podcast. We talked about the work that you're doing with KU on the NLI program. So it seems like sports is kind of core to your DNA. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's I guess to kind of do 30 seconds to back up on all of it, we've got a healthcare group where we handle hospitals, probably a dozen of them from Kansas City to Nebraska to Seattle. We've got do a fair amount of B2B work. When we look at our multi-unit retail stuff, we're thrilled about Sinclair Oil, which is a new account we have. We work with Hellsberg Diamonds. So big, broad range of things we're doing here. But in the sports world, yeah, we've been with the Kansas City Royals for, I don't know, I think for 15 or 16 years now. And that has just been so much fun. We jumped in a couple of years before they had their big run in World Series wins.
Wow.
And
what good timing.
Well, it was just so fun to be a part of it because, an organization like the Royals, particularly when you're making it to the playoffs and making it to the World Series and winning the World Series, you don't got to buy a lot of advertising. The seats are sold, but it's all about, but, we do a lot of work with Royals charities and how do you promote all the good things that they're doing in the community. And, and as quick as their success went, then they had a couple slower seasons and that's when you got to dig back in. And so, yeah, that's been a ton of fun. Soccer is taken the world by storm, at least this year. And Sporting Kansas City, their ownership have been friends of our agencies for decades, and that's exciting stuff. I'll kind of wrap it with KU, but the World Cup stuff, the exciting things happening there is, we're one of the 11 host cities. And I think there's a lot of people that were kind of wondering, so why Kansas City? You knew it was going to be Miami and New York, and you knew some of the big towns. And I was like, what's up with the Midwest? And, the truth is, we've got one of the most innovative soccer complexes in America. I mean, no one builds a stadium without coming to Kansas City first. We've got a completely dedicated women's stadium here with the Current, and that's an amazing thing. And we've been in planning meetings on World Cup for really a couple of years now, knowing it's going to be here. And we tried to come with this perspective that people really may not think of Kansas City as a world-class city. And there's a handful of things that really define it. And it's professional sports is one thing, but it's also healthcare and it's homelessness and it's job availability and travel and tourism. There's all these things that make a world-class city. And we're trying to use this World Cup opportunity as a way to really prove that Kansas City is, World Cup to world class, in that we've got these amazing things going on here. And there's going to be 4 billion, viewers. We have 4 host countries that have chosen us. And it's the big one.
Wow.
It's Argentina. They're all coming to Kansas City because here we are in the Midwest with our brand new airport, all the things going on here. So that's the kind of work that we're doing. And I think we've produced 40 videos for them already, just talking about Kansas City is a special place. And we don't want the World Cup to come and go like the NBA. We had the NFL draft, and how cool was that? But when it was over, it was kind of over. And even some of the World Series activities, after the World Series, people on to the next thing. We're using World Cup as a springboard to say, wow, Kansas City is a place people ought to have their eyes on because it's just exploding here. So that's some of the marketing work we're doing on the World Cup. It's not really about, we're going to sell out the stadium. This is more about how do we push our brand out to the world. So
I love it. So it's really about taking this moment to brand Kansas City as a global destination, whether that's tourism, economic development, conferences, and other types of events like what you've got coming up. So I love that. I spend a fair amount of time in travel media and, met with the Caribe Mexicana guys recently, and they're hosting 5 World Cup teams. And it's always fun to learn about, you learn these little things you never knew, right? Like the fact that Cancun it's the only city with a direct flight to every single city in the World Cup in
Is
North
that
America.
right? Interesting.
Only one.
Yeah.
And they have the second most hotel rooms of anywhere in the world except Las Vegas. So I feel it's like a really amazing time to look at North America as a group of countries, with Mexico and the US and Canada really all coming together for World Cup, and the fervent fanfare that people love about soccer. And I love the idea of really showcasing Kansas City as part of that mix. And I learned a bunch of things about your city today that I didn't know. And, I'm glad I'll hopefully be able to come and visit again, whether
I
it's
hope
business
so,
or otherwise.
yeah.
So I like that. All right. So, and then tell me about your, so were you in the service? Were you in the Air Force, or was that something?
I was not. We
Okay.
do just a ton of charitable work here. It's really kind of core to our culture. We've got about 145, 150 people here now. And I've been on just a handful of boards in Kansas City. Like I was chairman of the Boy Scouts and been on that board for 25 years, which is a big organization here. It's like 17,000 kids in the program. It's really a big city. And the American Royal is our cowboy side, which is youth education and agriculture. So we have the world's biggest barbecue here in the Kansas Motor Speedway, and we've got all the rodeos and livestock shows. And through a lot of the events that I've done with that, we always have these like really cool flyovers, and they're all done by the 303rd out of Whiteman. And these guys are just they're the badasses of the country. You know, they're clearing the battlefields for anything you've ever heard of, and they're tied up in a lot of places overseas right now. And so as I got to know them, I kind of I'm their civilian commander, which is kind of a dumb title for me. You know, I try to connect them with community. I don't do anything in Kansas City that doesn't have a table of pilots there. We get to stand up and reward them, respect them, and also kind of be around to help them with their next thing. You know, once they get out of the Air Force, a lot of guys may jump into just to be pilots for big airlines, but others like, hey, what's my next thing? So, so it's just been this brotherhood, and they're just an amazing group of guys. And so, that's what I do out at Whiteman. So it's pretty cool stuff.
I love that. That's really cool. I love that give back, and especially to military. You know, the military are our brightest and our finest, and sometimes, you know, there's not always a direct correlation to their skill set to the workforce, but the discipline and the rigor and the leadership,
did hire any one of them immediately.
You can't, you can't teach that. You know, skill sets can be learned, but the core foundation that you get from the armed services is not something that you can teach unless you've been through it. And I say that as a fellow guy that didn't serve, but based here in San Diego, I get to spend a lot of time with special operators, and they're some of the most extraordinary human beings I've ever met in my life. So I love that.
That's exactly right. It's an honor to be able to hang out with those guys. That's a special group.
Yeah, 100%. So tell me a little bit about Fuel Labs. Sounds like, you know, like everybody, you guys are trying to figure out how AI gets incorporated into the agency. How do you use it for a cutting edge across disciplines? You know, we'd love to learn more about Fuel Labs, and how are you guys practically leveraging AI in the agency to become more efficient and better at the work you do for clients?
Yeah, that's that kind of got on our radar, I don't know, 2.5 years ago, probably 3 years ago. Just knowing that it's coming, we're like, hey, we need to figure this thing out. And then the more deeper you get into it, you start to figure out as an agency owner that, hey, this is actually a survival move. You've got to embrace this, and on so many levels, you actually have to lead this. And we made that decision about 18 months ago. I've been in the 4As for years. I've got some member agency guys who are just like Broadhead in Minneapolis. They're really leading the pack on this stuff. And these guys have been all my friends for years, and they inspired us to say, hey, let's, we put a big, I don't know, 7-figure budget behind. Let's really lead our clients in this space. And
wow,
it's changing in a fast way. We've opened up a floor of our building to have people truly dedicated to it. We branded it Fuel Labs as just a separate company. Because we're getting a lot of attention down there from customers that may never be advertising or marketing clients. They're not coming to us for media. They want AI business strategy that's going to help them lead to other places. And it really works with WTA in that our whole entrepreneurial spin, which is mine and the people we've hired here, it's all about how do we make a business better. It may not necessarily even be a marketing challenge. It could be a sales challenge or an operational challenge or whatever. That's the level we dig in with our clients because at the end of the day, a win's a win, whatever gets a company there. So we're getting a lot of attention from a lot of big brands around the country. They're like, hey, we don't need your advertising help, but we could really use some AI strategy. So it's changing daily, and there's an awful lot we're still trying to figure out. But we're going kind of with both feet in on this one for sure.
I love it. Well, I feel like it's permeating every corner of our life. And I think, the smart agencies like yours are figuring out how do they leverage AI, not just to create film, and not just to create advertising, but to really create business outcomes for clients. And I think more and more the lines are blurring between consultancy and advertising agency. And we've seen that in the acquisitions of both in both directions. And I think at the end of the day, what it comes down to is creativity solves problems, whether it comes from the business world or whether it comes from the creative world. And, there's going to be overlap and intersection there, and each people have their lanes and their specialities and their, types of things that they're good at. But I think more agencies need to think like consultants, the way that the consultants have started to think like agencies.
I just think they have to. We've got a client with I won't mention names. They've got about a $25 million budget with us. And we took some AI strategy to them this week, and they really think they're going to double what they're going to do next year. And it's just like, we don't think this way. And plus we're going to take you to market in a tenth of the time. So yeah, so we're really excited about what that looks like in the upcoming years. So
love it. All right, if you don't mind, I would like to harken back to a little bit about what you talked about with legacy planning. So obviously, with the passing of your mentor, Travis Walz, must have been a big shock for you at only 27 years of age. You also had to figure out how to work it out with the estate in order to take over the agency. You kind of got a trial by fire. We're moving into a segment of the workforce right now where the boomers are going to pass on like $90 trillion worth of wealth to the next generation. And as much as we might think every agency is in a position for great legacy planning and transition planning, there's still quite a few shops out there that do things that have leadership that's been around forever. Their kids don't want anything to do with it, and they haven't figured out what to do next. So as you speak to the agency owner out there who might be thinking about what they're going to do as a transition plan for the next 10 years, what advice do you give to that agency owner that is kind of entering that season of their career?
Yeah. Well, don't do it when you're 26. Unless you want to learn how to lose a lot of money, I guess.
Oh my goodness.
I think there's a lot to be said for just making sure you're got some eye on what the future is going to look like. I've always joked around here, if I had a crystal ball, I wouldn't want to look in it, because there's a lot about figuring this stuff out yourself that's healthier, it makes you stronger, you always come out kind of better. But we've built this whole agency with real professionals. I mean, I look at our executive team here, 6 of them have actually owned other companies.
Wow.
So these guys have, they've fallen and skinned their knees a few times, and that means everything. We also kind of go even down a level on who's doing all our group supervisors. These guys have all been in the category. We handle the Hard Rock brand globally, and we do that through we've got a subsidiary company that's doing that, that's Osceola Group Marketing. And, that team is nothing but gaming people and entertainment people, that kind of thing. We look at our folks that we were hiring for Sinclair Oil, they're coming out of that space. So I would just say, make sure you win the people game. One of my mentors in life is a fellow named Cliff Illig, who owns Sporting Kansas City, and he owns Cerner in Kansas City. And he's been a major philanthropic business leader in Kansas City. And we've been on boards together for 25 years. And I asked him that. I go, what wins? He's like, you've got to win the people game. You've got to make sure you've got true experts, people that are loyal, people that believe in your vision, people that understand where you're going and help you build that. Find all the people that are better than you are. Winning the people game is what gets you to the next level. And when I look as we build the agency, it's all about, well, who's been business leaders? Well, that's who we want. Who are these people I can pull out of these categories that are experts? Well, that's what we want. And next thing you know, you're sitting down with your clients and they're like, oh, you guys get it. I'm like, yeah, I hope so. That's the business objectives that override just the marketing side. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question or not, but
I think it's great. I think sometimes we like to, fancy ourselves as agency people where it's like, oh, we have outside perspective. What can you learn from the guy that's done automotive and he's worked in tech and he's worked in cellular phones? What does he bring to the hospitality category? And I think, sometimes outside thinking is important, but if you don't know the brass tacks, hospitality, I've never seen an industry where there's more people in leadership and management who started parking cars, being a bellman, being a concierge, being even on the cleaning staff. Like in hospitality, it's truly probably one of the most democratized industries within the US economy, where you can start at the bottom and someday be at the very top, or at least be a GM of a hotel.
Yeah.
And if you don't, and hospitality, the people are the product. So if you don't understand that industry, like you're going to have a hard time telling me that insights from this other category, like there might be some gems to learn here and there, but you got to have the foundations down.
You're absolutely right. You just see things, you learn things, you just pick up stuff, and that's an education you're not going to get out of a college somewhere.
Yeah, 100%. Tell me about what do you think has been the success or the success fuel behind triple digit growth since 2023? I mean, there's a lot of agency owners that could, that would be a number that they would be fetishizing. So
what is that?
I'd be curious, what do you think was behind that? Do you have some brass tacks on how you think you guys were able to pull that off?
Yeah, it's probably a couple things. Most of my career, we'd always been kind of this 40 or 50 person agency, and which has really been great. It's great for culture. It's a family place. I mean, all of that has been a lot of what built us. That, though, too, is also a pretty vulnerable place to be. So that's why we got to kind of ramp this thing up. Part of where we've been through all of that is we never really made much of a splash about who we are. Mm-hmm. And we've got someone that came in the agency. Her name's Katie Jennings. She runs a lot of our business development work, but also she kind of plugged us into the whole PR side of stuff. And we just kind of kept our heads down and just did what we did every day. But once we started kind of telling some of our stories about how we survived, the passing of a Walz, and how we developed some of these groups, and we got some of these leaders. We've got, if you look around our agency, you're going to find people from VML, from Tombras, from MMG, from Barkley. I mean, we have got some really killer people on upper level and people never knew those stories. So we started to submit our names into things. So we got the Kansas City Small Business of the Year, which is a big thing.
Wow, congrats.
Champions of Business for 3 years. We got the EY Entrepreneur of the Year. We won that in Kansas City, and then we won that on a regional level. So I was out in California.
That's a big
representing the Midwest. It's different as an ad agency guy out there. I mean, the guys out there at Starbucks and Amazon and all these major companies are like, why am I here? What's going on? But all of a sudden you do that stuff, that got us a lot of press and big things happening. And then all of a sudden, I think a couple of bigger brands, instead of us kind of kicking in doors, our phones were ringing. And I think that would be my tidbit to any agency owner is don't be afraid to make a little noise if you're doing good stuff. And we were very active in not only award stuff, but also the community work and the boards. And, we pay our people here to take a couple of days off a year, just charitable stuff. Go do it, go give back. And I don't care if it's pets or cancer or your church, or pick something you love and go do it, and get that stuff out there for us. And that's an investment we make that's just pays back, in spades. So that I think is a lot of the growth stuff. And when we're throwing on numbers like, triple digit growth, when all of a sudden a client walks in with a $25 million budget, I mean, your growth is going to go pretty fast. And
yeah, totally. Yeah,
so
it just takes a couple of chips to knock that up, right?
It really does. So we the last couple of years, 3 or 4 in a row, we've had a couple of big things happen in a great way for us. And we still are trying to maintain this culture of kind of a family-owned, easy run agency, and we try to be Midwestern great people, all that kind of stuff. That matters when you're competing in different places around the country. I think it's kind of the Kansas City story. People are like, wow, what's going on over there? So
yeah, I love that. It's interesting. You talk about the PR story and kind of your own storytelling. I think a lot of times, there's a humility, right, to the agency life of not wanting to sing your own story. You give the glory to the clients, and you kind of, of course there's the celebratory award statues that we go pick up at these award shows every year.
Right.
And that's kind of the currency that we're allowed to talk about. But the PR story is obviously important. And I think one big thing that you mentioned with COVID is I think because we couldn't go and do pitches in person, people looked at your marketing as an agency as kind of a, do you drink your own Kool-Aid, so to speak? Are you doing the things that you're telling me to do?
Right.
So you kind of had to step up your own marketing and tell your own story in a way that you would be able to present it to clients because, we couldn't go do the in-room pitch with boards and presentations and build the relationships that we were able to build in the real world. So
that's exactly. More times than not, you just don't have the time to do it either. You really have to make a commitment that you're going to try to make a little noise. And we just say it's like planting Christmas trees. You're going to make a lot of noise, and a year and a half from now, things are going to happen. So that's what we've been embarking on. So.
Yeah, it's smart. I've seen a few agencies actually set up a client committee where the agency peels off, 2 or 3 leaders, and they say, okay, you're going to treat these people just like any other client. You're not going to move their meetings around and deprioritize their stuff because other work comes first. You're going to treat them as the client for the agency, and you're going to run the same process that you run with these people as the stewards of our agency brand, the same way you would any other client. And I feel like that's a good way to make sure you don't like deprioritize yourself.
We all say we do that, but that works half the
time. There's always the reality of it too. I think, as much as I like to think, the media buys on my podcast and, my videos are getting edited the fastest and all that stuff. So totally. All right. I'd love to talk about Fuel Labs just a minute more. We talked about this idea of kind of the Midwestern sensibility. One of the big, you guys were actually pretty early to a major investment in AI, but there's also the human elements that a lot of agency folks are being displaced by, technology, kind of, especially at the entry level and especially on the media side, strategy planning, et cetera. Be curious how you're keeping a human-centric approach with the Fuel Labs, and how are you thinking about, scaling the next generation of workforce with some of the easiest opportunities to create efficiencies on your team might be those frontline people. Maybe you don't need to hire as many interns or as many junior media planners or junior accounts people. Be curious how you're balancing the human effect.
Yeah, it's I guess I would say we look at it kind of holistically, in that as long as we keep growing, then we need to be hiring people with both hands. And that's really what the path has been. When this was first introduced kind of widespread to the agency, then everyone's like, oh, worried about it. What about my job and all that? And we just made the statement that no one's going to lose a job. Our plans actually grow our staff by 10 or 15%. But what will cost you your job is if you don't embrace this and understand that agencies are not going to be able to be efficient and survive without really embracing AI and building the things that are there. And part of Fuel Labs, all agencies run the risk of the client saying, hey, I got Chat GPT. I mean, we got this. It's like, wait a minute, Chat GPT is one spoke of 15 things in the wheel that we're going to bring to the table. And that's what's building a true, like, we own the platform, right? So we're building platforms that we take out to our clients. So all the staff that embraces that and gets behind it, you're going to be in a good spot. The efficiencies that we have, even running the agency, that, if we can take 15% of your day of these mundane little bullshit things that eat up your time, let AI do that. And why don't you go focus on client work, or focus on a new business thing we're doing, or focus on whatever it might be. So everybody gets to take a breath and breathe better. But it really is not about reducing staff here. And there's a lot of chatter different ways about that. But if we keep growing, we're going to keep needing a lot of people to help us with all this stuff.
I love it. And, going back to that, you talked a little bit about that Midwestern sensibility. I think a lot of brands have seen that maybe they were speaking too much to kind of West Coast, East Coast audiences, especially when you kind of look at where the country is today and, how disruptive the last election was, as far as, people thinking that one thing was going to happen and something else happened. And, not the first time we've heard that story. But do you think brands are looking for kind of, I hate to use a pejorative, but the flyover state point of view and the flyover state thinking that, hey, there's this big swath of consumers in the middle of the country that I might not know as well as, some of these other agencies, because I grew up in Los Angeles or New York City or San Francisco, and I need to figure out how to market to these consumers in a way that's authentic, where I don't, alienate half my audience.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess the answer is I hope so. I mean, there's clearly a big, if you're to take the top 10 big cities out of the country, then now you got the rest of us,
Yeah.
So there's definitely perspective here that we know and offer and grew up with and understand. And I think it's a fair thought to throw that out there. what you're competing with is just crazy great talent in New York and LA and Chicago and some of the ad markets there. So, and they're often recruiting people from all over, and with, you know, Zoom and everything else now, people can be in a lot of different places. So I'm almost thinking that playing field's actually starting to level a little bit. But I will say big brands that are overlooking some of the Minneapolises and, you know, the Dallases and Kansas Cities, and, you know, some of these markets really understand how a lot of middle America works is that's flawed. I mean, there's a lot of just really killer talent here. So
love it. As an appointee to the Gubernational Economic Council, you know, you talked about some of the reasons why Kansas City is a great place, and it's a great place for both people and corporations to be thinking about. Any big wins on luring anybody exciting to Kansas City that that you can talk about that you're excited about?
Oh, you know, Kansas City's just growing off the map with that stuff. And again, I wouldn't take credit for a lot of this. A lot of my government work was probably like 10 years ago.
Oh, got it.
Okay. On the Governor's Economic Council, and they had asked me to be Secretary of Commerce and a few things for the state. And I was like, yeah, I got business to run here, so I stayed on the sidelines. But I'll tell you, there's just, you know, Panasonic Energy has put a big plant in here. There's a lot of really big, cool things that are happening here in the Midwest for sure. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Charlie, it's been a pleasure talking to you this morning. You know, in full transparency, I wasn't aware of your shop before your PR firm reached out, so I'm really glad they did. I think we want to, you know, especially use this platform to highlight amazing shops that aren't just in Los Angeles and New York, although we love those markets. And we're always excited to hear about a shop that's punching above their weight class, you know, in a fun market like Kansas City or somewhere else. So thanks for spending some time to tell us about your career and your shop. So Charlie, if folks want to follow along with your thinking and or reach out, learn more about the agency, where would you like to send people?
Yeah, so the website is WTADS.com, and yeah, we're findable in a lot of places. So yeah, and I really appreciate the time. It's always fun to chat about growth and what we're doing. So yeah, if anyone has any questions or anything else, just reach out and find us.
You got it. Well, good luck to you. And for those of you who are following along at home, if this is the first time you're seeing the show, don't forget to give us a follow or a subscribe. If you're listening to the show, a honest review on whatever podcast platform you happen to be listening to would serve us well and help us find a larger audience. And if there's a brand out there who you think would benefit from learning about the conversation that I had with Charlie about middle America marketing, or even marketing in Kansas City, or if there's a sports marketer who wants to get involved in the World Cup and didn't realize that Kansas City is a tier 1 market, that you've got 5 of the biggest clubs in the world that are going to be hosted in Kansas City during the upcoming World Cup, or if you know somebody in agency land who you think would benefit from the conversation that I had with Charlie today, don't forget to share the show. And with that, I will wish you a great day, Charlie. Appreciate you coming on.
Awesome. Thanks, Dylan. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.